And welcome back. Stranded in Pittsburgh with a brand new intro video made by yours truly. Nate is geeking out over there. He cannot believe
Fantastic.
the level of professionalism that this show
It's
has reached. And
It's
if you watched,
incredible.
thank you. If you watched last week's episode, you know that we are nothing but professional. Calling that an episode is kind of a stretch. As the Steeler Bills post-game live stream, potentially the most feedback I've ever received on an episode, and most of it was because the man in the middle, Ethan Morrison, just carried the live stream on his back. Good or bad, that's up for you to
Ethan,
decide.
I hope you went back and watched that, Ethan. It was quite comical.
No, absolutely not. I have not watched a lick of that back yet. No.
I have a question for the three of you. Might be an early contender for moment of the year, and we're not even out of January yet. But thank you for joining us for this edition of Stranded in Pittsburgh. A lot to talk about. Nick, Nate, and Ethan back at it again. Three area freelancers paving the way for mediocre Pittsburgh sports discussion. A lot of fun topics to talk about this week. And for once, the Steelers aren't going to dominate the chat. We're finally going to give some credit to some of these other teams. And if something didn't happen yesterday with this team, I think it might have been a different conversation. But the Pittsburgh Pirates, we've said, make a big signing, make a meaningful signing. And it has kind of divided the fan base so far. But yesterday they did sign Aroldis Chapman to a 1 year, $10.5 million deal to kind of strengthen that bullpen. I know a lot of people wanted them to go starter. They definitely need another starter. But Ethan, you got the boots on the ground there at old PNC Park. What do you make of this signing here?
I like it. Yes, he's older. Yes. He's not what he once was. Chapman was not what he once was, but still a very, very, very good signing for the Pirates. Really shore up the back end of that bullpen. Obviously, you have David Bednar, Colin Holderman. Those two guys were those 8-9 inning guys. Now you add Aroldis Chapman to the mix, who's still very, very serviceable at his age. I believe he's 34. Hit 103 on the gun last year, averaged 99 miles an hour on his fastball. Only allowed 4 home runs last year with Kansas City and the world champion Texas Rangers. So he's still a guy that can get you innings, that can work consecutive days, consecutive innings throughout the week and throughout the season. So I think he's a very, very good piece. Like I said, he's still a guy that can get the job done for you. And when Bednar may be out, may need a day of rest, you have that guy that can still lock down a game for this team. And while it's not, as Nick, you mentioned, it's not the signing that a lot of people were looking for in terms of that big signing, the Pirates still have a little bit more time to get that done. Obviously, the clock is ticking now. We're less than a month away before pitchers and catchers report. But I think overall, I think this really shores up this bullpen as a whole. And it's one of probably the top bullpens in the National League. Just looking at that back half, you saw the season that Holderman had last year. You saw the season that Bednar had. He's one of the best closers in the National League, let alone probably the league as a whole, and just how he's really just come of his own, especially after getting traded over from San Diego to Pittsburgh, and just how he's performed over the past couple of seasons. And just to add one more pitcher and one more back-end guy to that mix, you really shore up the back half, and a bullpen that can really lock down innings and really win you games, especially another guy that you don't hear a lot about, Ryan Borucki, had a sub-3 ERA in those mid-2s. He had a really, really good season. Dauri Moreta as well. He had his highs in the beginning of the season, kind of dropped off in the middle. It still, I feel like, had a very, very good season, especially after coming over from Cincinnati the year before. So that bullpen is set. Now you got to look for that one more starter. Obviously, there's been rumors with Noah Syndergaard potentially coming over. You obviously have Mitch Keller, Martin Perez, and JT Brubaker coming back off of Tommy John's. Yet to see how he's going to adjust to all of that, especially coming off of that major elbow injury. But now you need to look for that one more starter that can really shore out the back half. Obviously, there's going to be a competition. See that 4 or 5. Obviously, you still have Quinn Priester and Roanzi Contreras still at that back half of that rotation. It's yet to be seen if those guys can actually perform to the abilities of where you want that back half of the rotation to be in a team that wants to compete for a postseason spot. Those two guys right now, especially after watching them last season, I don't think they have what it takes. You still need to bring another guy in from the outside. And Ben Cherington, Bob Denning, they've been teasing this big move, and there's been talks of this big move coming to fruition over these next couple of weeks. It's yet to be seen. But I do think we're going to I don't think the Pirates are done yet. I think we're still going to see that one more move before spring training hits. There's still a lot of good options out there. Still a lot of guys yet to be signed that still have a lot of potential to make waves on a big league roster. So it's going to be interesting to see down the stretch, down these next couple of weeks, what the Pirates can do.
Yeah, and this, the signing of Aroldis Chapman was definitely a surprise, and it, might be the most shocking move, or at least one that's met with so much fanfare in terms of a pitcher since probably the Chris Archer trade? Ethan, what do you think? Since Chris Archer,
without the baggage that went along with it, you're just signing the guy, which is great.
Absolutely, but to bring in a guy who has the past track record, 2 championships, 7-time All-Star. He's obviously older, but it gives you a tremendous 1-2 punch in the back end. And even on nights that Bednar might be not available, you have Chapman there to close out a game for you, and then Holderman to set him up. So yeah, Ethan, you're really on point there with this being, one of the better bullpens in the National League. And, with Aroldis Chapman, again, maybe he lost his stride a little bit there before he picked it back up last year and had a pretty solid year with 3.07 ERA. He is still so daunting. For batters to go out there and know you're probably going to see a 100-mile-per-hour pitch, that's got to be pretty scary. And in a game, the Pirates might be winning 2-1, and you need 3 outs, and you have Chapman at your disposal, something that the Pirates have experienced for several years when he was in Cincinnati and Chicago, seeing him all the time. And I know that was, probably one of the big things when he was signed. Oh, boy, he was with the Reds, and he pegged McCutchen in the back. But those guys played together. But it's one of those guys, you have him on your team. You don't want him on the opposite side of you. You want him on your squad. And I think that's a massive pickup for the Pirates and the biggest free agency deal that Cherington has dished out so far in his tenure with the Buccos.
Yeah, this is a big move. No matter how you feel about Chapman, whether it be some of the off-field issues, whether it's him throwing at McCutchen, this is a household name that they are bringing in to really solidify that bullpen. And there's a lot of different avenues they can kind of take here. Does this mean they're going to trade one of these other emerging pieces in the bullpen and use that to bring in another starter? Is Chapman himself going to be a piece of leverage they kind of have with a contender down the line? Before the deadline, they go, oh, we have Chapman here. Your bullpen's a little iffy. Give us a pretty nice price tag and we'll give them to you. There's a lot of different avenues this can go down. And I'm interested to see what happens. And I'm already sick of the McCutchen narrative. Nate, as you said, they were teammates. The Pirates back in those days, even up until recently, they were known for pitching inside. It wasn't uncommon for them to accidentally plunk guys and teams retaliate. Them and the Reds have never gotten along. They were teammates. And that was 6 years ago now? We've heard nothing about them feuding ever since really he did peg McCutchen. It's not like they go at it on Twitter. It's not like they bring it up or anything. I think it's kind of been blown out of proportion. And I saw so many tweets about it last night. And it's asinine that people are acting like this beef from when McCutchen still had dreadlocks. And they're still trying to act like it's a fresh wound or something. It's done. You're out there fishing for engagement. I saw one person I follow that tweeted about it about 4 times. It's not a story, in my opinion, and maybe I'll be proven wrong. But, I don't think it's that big of a deal. And as Ethan alluded to, now you have Bednar, now you have Holderman, and now you have Chapman. 7, 8, 9, you're good to go. The other thought that I've had, and there's really no end to this thought, but do they know that their starting rotation isn't going to be that sharp, and they're making sure this bullpen is kind of in a good spot. And I know there's still time for them to get a pitcher. And Ethan, again, as you mentioned, what is the future like for Contreras? What is the future like for Priester? Do they move one of those guys? I certainly don't think you could bank on one of them kind of taking the steps Mitch Keller did, where they went from looking lost to going, wow, there's all his potential. Where's that been for the last couple seasons? I don't think you could bank on that happening again. So this whole entire pitching rotation and bullpen, there's so many dots to try to connect. There's so many different kind of storylines you can go with this. But this seems to be a huge piece of that puzzle in terms of their arms. And it's going to be something that we follow well into the season because there's just so many different ways it can go. Does he still have something left? Is he here at doing a Shaq Celtics or Suns tour? What's going to happen? Definitely going to be a storyline in Pittsburgh that maybe the entire baseball world kind of follows for a while here.
Yeah, and you look at this team right now and how it's structured and how the roster's kind of panned out. It's still a very young team. Obviously, they have the major league experience under their belt, but especially this bullpen. Not a lot of guys have gotten that consistent time in the majors. They sign a guy that has veteran experience. He's been to the World Series before. He's won the damn thing before. So he has that experience. He's there. He's coming in to a team. I mean, McCutchen was that mentor last year. Rich Hill was that mentor for the pitchers for that first part of the season. The Pirates still need that veteran piece, and they got it in Chapman in that back half of the bullpen now. It's still yet to be seen, especially on the position player side, who that are. Obviously, you have McCutchen still, but you still need to add some seasoned veterans around that mix, maybe a starter as well to really shore up that rotation. But you really, once again, you're bringing in a veteran guy that, he's not going to get blown over in the wind. I mean, Rich Hill still 8 innings up for them last year, and he's 43, 44 years old now. You have a guy in Chapman, like we mentioned, he's still got some gas left to the tank. He's still throwing over 100 miles an hour night in and night out. So you bring in that guy, you're really like we said, shore up that back half of the bullpen, and you really just want to watch and see where this thing goes. And at this point, you're getting past that hometown storyline with McCutchen coming back. You're getting past that hometown kid and David Bednar. Yes, that's still there, but now you're bringing in a piece. Yes, he has baggage outside of the game of baseball and everything that happened back in 2016, where he was suspended 30 games for violating MLB's domestic abuse, domestic policies that they have in place there. And, you might not support the man in what he's done in the past, but I think as a whole, if this team, thrives in this, and he does put up the numbers that he did last year, I think fans are starting or will get over that, and I think moving forward, it's a very solid piece in this back half of the bullpen.
And to jump off that last point, Ethan, of what you sort of mentioned there, I think the last thing I'll say about it is I'm very intrigued to see in about 2 months and about 2 weeks when the Pirates are home and he comes out from that bullpen for the first time and heads towards the mound, what the reaction is like in PNC Park. The crowd that's probably going to be there, I'm sure it's going to be during opening week, and that crowd will be packed. I'm just so curious to see the response. Obviously, I mean, he's on your team now, so I'm sure it's going to be all appreciation at this point now that you have that guy on your roster. So very curious to see what happens at PNC Park when he takes the mound for the first time.
Absolutely. And from one Pittsburgh team to another, we're going to talk about the Penguins now, who last night, yikes. Big yikes. You got Malkin scoring on the wrong net. Total disarray. Nate, this is your time to shine, my friend. What went wrong yesterday?
Well, I saw someone on that I have on Snapchat said, you know what, everyone's going to be laughing, and we're going to look back at this point because this is rock bottom for the Penguins this year, and they're going to go on and make a run to the Stanley Cup. Well, I don't think that's going to happen, but this is absolutely rock bottom at this point. I mean, if you look at the overall record in terms of wins losses, they're below 500. You let in an own goal with this power play that's supposed to be exceptional, that is 31st in the goddamn league on the power play. But at least, hey, they scored, might have been the wrong net, but regardless, I don't know. I mean, it was just this road trip to Vegas and Arizona has been quite awful. And I put it on Twitter last night that goal was pathetic because that should never happen. And I don't care if it's Chris Letang dumping it back because I know, he took some of the blame for it, but Evgeny Malkin didn't even speak to the media following the game. But he also said that there was another guy back there who put a stick on the puck and basically redirected it in the net, and that was Evgeny Malkin. And Malkin continues to make blunder after blunder this year, penalty after penalty, as he's done sort of all his career. But I don't know. It's just at this point where this team needs those stars and that star power that they have on this roster to step up and make big plays. And it's actually been the opposite outside of one guy in Sidney Crosby. Because basically, besides that top line, it's been invisible. Crosby with another, incredible goal, scoring from different ways that weren't even imaginable. Had 2 goals in the win against the Kraken. I mean, it's been him and Gensel, basically for the most part. Now Gensel, who knows if Gensel's going to be on this team in 2 weeks. So, I mean, it started with that 2-goal lead that was blown and burned in Vegas. Maybe they had that Vegas, little bit of a Vegas hangover there. They got out there early. Heard they canceled some practices out there. I mean, they took a trip out. They had a week off, and they went out to Vegas early. Why? That's kind of, a little ridiculous. But they lose that game. They lose to an Arizona team that's basically similar to where the Penguins are, except they're much younger, and a team that's beatable. Instead, you have former Penguins Jason Zucker scoring so early into the game. You have that, horrible blunder that you saw with the own goal, and now like the Penguins, they have become a kind of a laughingstock. And just to think where they were, 4 or 5 years ago, making runs to the cup, and even before this year, you get Carlson in there, Crosby, Malkin, Letang, sort of on their last ride, and it's gone sour right now for the Penguins.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned it. Sidney Crosby is playing out of his mind, incredibly well. And sure, he has 3 cups and has been everything he was advertised as and more. But don't you feel like if he's playing this well, he deserves to have another shot at the cup? And right now, they look miles away from that being in the realm of possibility. And Nate, this is something we've talked about, I think, a couple months ago, maybe the beginning of December or so, was, how long is the leash on Mike Sullivan? And in my opinion, again, this is coming from a more casual hockey fan, if they were gonna dump him anytime soon, or if his leash was really short, you feel like it would have happened by now after you blow a 2-goal lead in Vegas and after whatever the hell happened last night. Do you think that there's still a chance they'd get rid of him, or what do you take on the odds of him being fired?
Yeah, I don't know if they'd move on to him at this point. I mean, we've seen it before that they have moved on from coaches, but that's all up to the front office, different ownership, different GM now, and Kyle Dubas' first year. But I mean, they're sitting second to last in the Metro. This team is obviously not playing with a lot of effort. Even after they let up that goal, it was a 4-2 game, but it seemed as if the Penguins were done after that goal was let in. I mean, the competitiveness just went all the way down and into the toilet. But the All-Star break's coming up, and I know that was kind of the window that Dubas gave the Penguins. You have from what it was early December until the All-Star break to show what you are. And obviously these 2 games haven't been good. And it wasn't even like, I read some stuff. I don't even think Sullivan was even like pissed about it. Like, he was upset that, okay, we're not, playing where we should be. But he said, you know what? We'll eventually get there. We have the roster. So it's not like the alarms are ringing in his head right now. I mean, they should be, and I'm sure they actually are. But, what he spoke, and told the media, it seems like right now that he's not extremely worried and that they'll bounce back and they'll take this little break during the All-Star break and, get things together. But boy, I mean, I don't know. I don't think Sullivan goes at this point because right now it hasn't. I don't know how much you can put it on him.
Mhm.
When you have one of the better rosters on paper, at least in terms of elite players, I mean, yes, it goes to him, but also when are those guys going to step up? When's Evgen and Malkin going to, really start taking things seriously and playing at the elite level he should be? Because we saw glimpses of it. When is Erik Karlsson going to stop turning the puck over and letting 2-on-1 after 2-on-1 after 2-on-1? So, I mean, it's time for those guys to take a hard look at themselves, I think. And you have a little bit of a break coming up, and then that's it. You have about 3 weeks to sort of make up your mind of where you want to be. And Dubas is in a sticky situation, and who knows? This roster might look kind of different in about 2 weeks.
Do you have anything you expect to happen as far as the roster in terms of who they might send out or what they might bring in? You can say Jake Gensel and cop out if you'd
Well,
like.
well,
I put you
I
on the
mean
spot.
I think that is the cop out because Gensel, there's been no extension. There's not been any contract extension talks. Are pretty quiet, and I've heard some people say that that's pretty much going to be a pretty big option to send out of Pittsburgh. And that's a guy that, has 20 goals on the year. He's put up 40 goal seasons before, and the Penguins could bring in some pretty big pieces in return in terms of, draft picks or wherever the Penguins want to go at this point. But the window's still open at this point in terms of the championship run. It's just about executing. But you'd have to think that some other guys like Brian Rust could be up. I don't know how much the defense is going to change because they're not going to move Carlson. They're not going to move Letang. Pedersen has played pretty solid all year. He's your best defensive defenseman. Ruhwedel and P.O. Joseph really wasn't their fault in Arizona, anything that really happened. P.O. Joseph actually played a really good game. So, I mean, you may be looking at some of those longer tenured guys in terms of Gensel and Russ on the wings that can move. Lars Eller might be a chip you can move just because he's a veteran guy and he's a center and teams value that. So those are probably three guys. I mean, Lars Eller and maybe if you could somehow trade Raquel, which I don't know how many people would want him right now because he's not producing of where he should be and he's been hurt. But there's a couple of those guys outside, basically the four untouchables. So Malkin, Crosby, Letang, and Carlson, which, I wish Malkin wasn't untouchable, but I think since he signed that contract over the summer, he kind of has become that. But I don't know who you'd get in return for that either. But I don't know. It's just a couple options out there. Gensel seems like the most likely to be dealt at this point, at least what, has been said. So
Nate Breisinger carrying Penguin talk on his back, as usual. Penguins talk, as always, brought to you by Pure Hockey, NHL Peril, hockey gear, and more available at Pure Hockey. Click the link in the bio for more. Thank you to our friends at Stadium Scene TV for bringing us into connection with Pure Hockey. If you want to support the show and our friends at Stadium Scene, you can hit that link in the bio. Now it's time to move on to the Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers and their quarterback questions of 2024. Mike Tomlin said Pickett will be challenged. He's going to be challenged coming up. Interested to see what that means. So we're not going to spend too much time on it. We're going to go down the line. We'll start with Ethan because I've missed his voice during the Penguins segment. That's not me calling you out. I'm just saying I miss hearing those sweet vocal cords of yours purring. Ethan, who's going to be the starter come week one?
Well, just looking at how the Steelers are and Mike Tomlin has gone about broaching this question.
It's a hell of a word.
Yeah, there you go.
He couldn't have said that last week.
I know. Not a chance. Not a chance. But I think the way that Mike Tomlin's gone about this this question and this thing that's came up, especially after how Kenny Pickett's season ended and the sour note, if you will, of what happened at the end of the season and him taking a step back in a seat on the bench those last couple of weeks of the year. And now him coming out and he's saying that he is the QB1 but he will compete. When you thought that they were going to bring in a guy like Kirk Cousins, Justin Fields, some bigger named guy out of free agency or trade for someone, I don't think the Steelers are going towards that direction. Do I think Mason Rudolph will be on the roster next year? No, I do not. I just think of how everything went down and how he played and the direction that the Steelers are going in. I don't see Mason Rudolph back on this team. I don't see Mitch Trubisky back on this team. I don't think I even have to mention that. I think he'll be sent on his way and out into free agency once again to be signed elsewhere. As far as the Pickett situation goes, they're going to sign a veteran backup. As they mentioned, I think they're going to go more of a Jacoby Brissett route or some guy that has previous starting experience to give Pickett a little bit of a push and really say, like, if you cannot compete and outperform this guy who has had starting experience in his career, but hasn't started his full career like a Justin Fields, like a Kirk Cousins, then you're gone. So I see that happening. I see them getting a guy. I see them getting a guy with veteran experience coming into the roster. And then I also see them drafting another QB. Not as this is our next franchise quarterback, first round draft pick. No, I see them drafting in the later rounds just to shore up the back end of the depth chart. Might get released. Or not might get released, but will definitely be that third guy. Will be that emergency backup guy. Doesn't suit up on game days if he does not make push for that starting job in training camp and in the preseason. So that's really how I see that really taking shape of who the Steelers get on that roster, on that depth chart for quarterback. But it's also going to depend on that offensive coordinator. There's been names thrown around over the past week. I think the Rams pass game coordinator was thrown around. Cliff Kingsbury's name was thrown around as well, coming in for an interview. So it's all going to be dependent on that offensive coordinator. I think this position's still wide open for the taking, regardless of if Kenny is named that number one guy right now. There's still an option Mason comes back. There's still a possibility that whoever the Steelers bring in could get that starting job. So it's all going to be depending on how these guys gel with the offensive coordinator, how they pick up on the scheme, how they pick up on, a new way that things are being run outside of Matt Canada for the first time in however many years since he took over as the offensive coordinator. So it's all going to be who latches on the best and who really can really take that in stride and really move forward. Will that be Pickett? I don't know. Will it be from the outside, or will they bring back Mason Rudolph? That's all yet to be seen. So it's still up in the air, but I definitely think, Rudolph's out of here because I think after the way that he's performed, especially after sitting on the bench for over a year without playing a single snap in the regular season, I think he's going to find a good landing spot, especially as a solid backup number 2 guy elsewhere, and get paid some pretty good stinking money after the way he performed over these past couple of weeks.
Yeah, right now it's Pickett's job to lose. He's pretty much clear cut until whoever they bring in. And I think, Ethan, as you mentioned, it's a veteran backup and it's a draft pick, whether that's in the 3rd or 4th round, someone that, isn't going to really challenge for the starting job, isn't a franchise quarterback. But think about Brock Purdy. Mr. Irrelevant, last pick in the draft, he's gotten it done. So anybody who gets drafted obviously is someone who can play in the NFL and could challenge Pickett for that job. But I don't know. If I'm Kenny Pickett right now, I'd be down wherever in Florida or back home in Jersey or wherever he needs to be, and he better be working his ass off right now already. Hopefully that ankle and his injuries are all better. Maybe, I don't know. But you better go get the biggest defensive players from your past teams, whether that's Pitt or, back in Jersey, and you better be having them fly at you with 7 different guys, and he better stand in that damn pocket and make passes to receivers and work on not being scared with scared little happy feet and move out of the pocket and his little rule out and reverse that he tries to do every single time he feels pressure. So he has a lot to work on, and obviously this is Mike Tomlin's guy. He doesn't want to be wrong, especially after trying to find the replacement for Ben Roethlisberger. And sometimes it's okay to be wrong, and maybe Kenny Pickett isn't that guy, but as of now, Tomlin wants him to be, and still is supporting and hoping that he is. But yeah, Ethan, as you said, that was a good one you brought up. Jacoby Brissett's wouldn't be an awful signing. Haven't really thought about who they would bring in. But in terms of, I think they would definitely draft a quarterback at some point between the 3rd and 5th round, I would think, to bring in someone at least to fill that 3rd string role. But yeah, right now it's all Kenny Pickett, and but he has a long way to go until he's actually a number 1 quarterback in this league. And yeah, Ethan, as you mentioned, Rudolph, he's going to go and get a lot of money and be a good backup quarterback somewhere and potentially fight as well for a starting job elsewhere.
I think you two both kind of hit the nail on the head, and I thought maybe we'd get some hot takes here, but it's always professional here on Stranded in Pittsburgh. They're going to go with Kenny. They're going to go with Kenny. And Nate, this is what you said. This is the guy that they chose to replace Ben Roethlisberger. They're going to bring in a new coordinator. There's no way they don't give their golden child a shot with the new coordinator. I just don't see it happening. There's not a part of me that legitimately thinks they're going to give Mason Rudolph a look. They bring in Zach Robinson, the guy from the Rams, their quarterbacks coach. He has some history with Mason Rudolph, helped them prepare for the draft, things of that nature. It's a good Tomlinism. Maybe if they do end up hiring him, they try to bring in Rudolph, but I think what they're going to do, and I'm not trying to make the Steelers out to be some slimy, greasy operation, but I think the writing's on the wall. They're going to go, Mason played well and drove too hard of a bargain, and we didn't think it was worth it. And then they'll go out, as you two said, and they'll bring in some backup guy with some starting experience. Maybe it's Jacoby Brissett. Maybe they bring in Sam Darnold, who everyone wanted that year. They brought in Mitch Trubisky. Maybe they bring in Sam Darnold, who I think some people still think there's hope for him, or I don't know, some old geezer like Ryan Tannehill. I don't really believe that's going to actually happen, but I don't know. I think they sign, as you two said, some run-of-the-mill backup. Maybe they even do a Josh Dobbs reunion, and they say, oh, look, we tried. We gave him some pressure. And then they go out and sign some college quarterback who, because of COVID years, is so old he can't even qualify for his parents' health insurance anymore. They get Sam Hartman from Notre Dame or somebody who's, 30 years old, played his 8th year of college ball, and they never give him a legitimate shot. And it's going to be Kenny, is the long story short. It's going to be, and it's a matter of, who do they bring in as his OC, and are we confident as fans and journalists that he's actually going to be able to take some leaps in terms of improvement this season? Ethan, as you glow, do you have anything you want to mention there?
No. I think we all kind of hit the nail on the head there, and yeah, like we all mentioned, it's Kenny's job to lose. I think. When you look at it and you look how everyone's talked about it in terms of what Tomlin said last week and what all went on there, it's Kenny's job. He just has to do something that shows that he's at least serviceable and that he's improved from where he was at last year. And if he doesn't, and the Steelers still go with him, it's going to be a long year.
I agree. I just had another point, and I looked over at Nate and saw him smirk, and I started giggle inside, and I totally lost my train of thought. So,
Sorry.
oh well. Oh, Baker. I want Baker Mayfield. I know that's like a really typical like fever dream everyone's pitching. Dude wears his heart on his sleeve. He's a dog. I think sometimes his adrenaline kind of takes over. Like you saw that
Mm.
INT against Detroit that sealed the game. He does things like that sometimes, but I mean, he goes out there and he plays with a passion that the people of Pittsburgh would really get behind. And I mean, you're going to stick it to Cleveland too if you sign him and he ends up working out and beating them. You know, they gave up on him while he was injured as he tried to play through it. It's all right there, but they're not going to do it. They're not going to sign Baker. He's never going to do Hulu commercials again. It's over. But I can dream. I can dream. Pitt's dreams of finally beating Duke at Cameron Indoor became a reality. And boy, did it piss a lot of people off. Blake Hinson getting up on that scores table. There were so many middle fingers. Stone Cold Steve Austin was jealous. But they beat him for the first time at Cameron since 1979. I don't care that Jeremy Roach wasn't playing. I don't care Mark Mitchell wasn't playing. Jeff Capel was 4 years old the last time Pitt beat Duke at Cameron Indoor. That's worth getting excited about. And everybody getting all whiny, shouldn't have done that, get up on the scores table. Do you know what Duke does? Christian Laettner stomped on people. Grayson Allen's doing heel hooks. JJ Redick, I like JJ Redick. I'm not going to talk about his time with Duke. But I mean, Duke's really mad some guy got on a scores table and said, yippee, look at me. We won. We beat you. Give me a break. Look in the mirror.
Especially a team that is where Pitt's at right now, basically towards the bottom part of the ACC standings. But I don't know. That was a heck of a moment for Pitt. That'll go down as one of the top moments of this college basketball season. Probably, one of the top moments when you go back and, it's you're bringing in 2025. You go back and look at the calendar year of 2024. That's probably up there in top 5 moments of this year. At least pictures. Because, man, Blake Hinson not only just took on 10 Duke players, but he's taken on all 9,700 fans that are inside Cameron Indoor. And, I mean, that was just – when you talk about a spark plug in a season and a turnaround at a point that they were at 1-5 in ACC play, that's it right there. Now they have Georgia Tech, which they're playing right now on this Tuesday evening. Hopefully they don't take a step back, and that was just sort of a fluke. But Blake Hinson, last year there was a ton of veteran guys on that Pitt team that helped them make the NCAA tournament. This year, their leader is Blake Hinson, and he was on a terrible shooting slump for a while. And to go in there, not only for Pitt to pull off the upset against number 7, yes, Nick, you mentioned it, missing a couple of their key players, but the rest of those guys are 4 and 5 stars, so it don't matter anyways. But to go in and shoot 7 of 7 from 3 to break a Pitt record and to tie an ACC record, that's phenomenal. And to go put up shots that he does, he just, he's playing a horse out there. He's shooting from wherever he wants to on the floor with guys in his face, contested shots, and he's burying them. Now, you'd like to see that more often, but obviously that's a huge point in the season for Pitt to go in there. And again, it's been however many years, 45 years since they pulled that off in Cameron Indoor. But it better, trigger something in this Pitt team. It's a young team, but to jump on Blake Hinson's back, who had 24 points, I believe, in the win. But he also talked about, I don't know if you saw his interview with the Pitt beat reporters and like George Michalowski and them after the game. He said it wasn't necessarily disrespect. It was more of a respect thing to get up there and say, Duke is one of the toughest places to play at. And we climbed that mountain and got to the mountaintop and beat them. So that was me looking from the top of the mountain into the crowd after we took down and climbed that mountain. So I don't know. That was just all a really cool moment for, Pitt. But all that could be, in the distant past if they continue to be where they were just a few weeks ago and just struggle, because they got blown out by almost 30 by Duke the last time they played them at the Pete. So
yeah, it's been an up and down season for Pitt, but I've watched probably more Pitt basketball this year than I have in all my years of life, but it's an exciting brand of basketball to watch. I've watched
40.
It's also ugly sometimes.
But it is ugly. But like I haven't watched Pitt basketball in years. I think the last time I actually sat down to watch Pitt basketball when I was like 8 years old, watching them in the tournament. And and I watched them a little bit last year, but just to watch them play in the games that I have watched. Obviously, I watched the loss to Duke where they got blown out of the Pete there, but just the way that they fought. Obviously, their record's not where they want it to be at, especially in conference play, 2-5 on the year. But just the guys that they have Bub Carrington, they have Lalonde, the freshman, they have Blake Hinson, they have the Diaz Graham twins. Those guys are good pieces on this roster, and obviously there's no margin for error at this point on, if they want to make a deep run in that ACC tournament and have a slim shot at an at-large bid in the tournament. There's really no wiggle room now. They got to win, and they got to win now. And, their schedule, for the most part, looks pretty favorable. Obviously, you got Miami coming up, but you got Wake Forest, you got Notre Dame, you got NC State. Virginia's had their struggles at times, and then you got a date with Louisville in the middle of February. So the schedule looks favorable for this Pitt team down the stretch here. Obviously, I got some tests later on, but at this point, it's been really fun, and just to see them go into Cameron and get that win for the first time since '79 was just incredible, and just Hinson playing the role of the villain, hopping up onto the scores table. And who was it at? Who was the Duke player? Was that
Flipkowski? Yeah.
Flipkowski?
Yeah.
Whining and complaining that Hinson jumped on the scores table. Look at your fans. Look at your fans and look what they did. And Flipkowski was like, oh, he shouldn't be doing this. Yeah, give him the ring finger. Look at what your fans did. Your fans did the same thing. And you're acting like a hypocrite right now. And yeah, after Duke blew Pitt out of the water at their home gym, you don't think there was going to be some sort of, celebration that was going to come after that? And just the interviews after the game, and it was just all pure gold. And just to see, the way that they competed throughout that and the way that they shot the ball. I know Nate mentioned it. Hinson, 7 for 7. He was just hitting shots left and right. And, one of the best games that he's played in over the course of his career. And just the way that they came out, it's very exciting to watch. And, I think we've said it multiple times throughout the college basketball season, but Pittsburgh Hoops, they've provided some pretty memorable moments over the course of the year, regardless of how the records have played out over the course of the year so far. But, just for Pitt, just what an incredible night Saturday night was. And moving forward, if they could string together some wins, they're going to keep that momentum rolling.
Yeah, and, maybe it was that celebration a little Bush League. I'm sure, a lot of people around the country looked at that and said, what the heck is that guy doing? And if someone did that at the Pete, I'm sure everyone in there, 12,000 fans, would be like, what the hell is this guy doing? Booing him off the court. But it holds a much different weight when you're doing that in Cameron. I mean, obviously there was a reason he did it. And, it's you can take it whatever side you want to take it. But all in all, I mean, that's going to go down, as I touched on, one of the best moments of college basketball this season.
No doubt about it. There's also no doubt about it. Nate's got to leave in a minute here, so we better hurry up. Get your drinks in. It's last call, presented by Rogue Energy. Say goodbye to coffee. Say goodbye to water. Ethan, say goodbye to your Monday morning apple juice. Rogue Energy comes in all kinds of great flavors. It's going to give you the power you need to get through the day. Hit the link in the bio for more. Rogue Energy. Thanks for sponsoring the show. Nate, it's the last call. What do you have to say?
Well, us Pittsburgh guys, we've grown up and we've seen a lot, right? Pittsburgh Steelers, handful of Super Bowls. Even for you, Nick, an Erie guy, but still Pittsburgh fan at heart.
Mm-hmm.
Some Super Bowls, 3 Penguins Stanley Cup champions. Albeit the Pirates, it's been a long time since our fathers have seen them win a World Series. But, man, do you got a feel for the non-snowball throwers and Buffalo? Man, they just continue to endure gut punch after gut punch as Jim Nantz said it, the most dreaded words in Buffalo, wide right. It hurt them once again. It came back and caught them once again. All the way back in the 90s, they lose 4 straight Super Bowls. Unimaginable. Now you have, the next best thing in Josh Allen at quarterback, but he may go down as yet another Dan Marino to never win anything. Maybe get one Super Bowl appearance. But this Buffalo Bills team and that fan base, and not only for the Bills, but for like the Sabres, they've never seen anything in quite some time. Playoff streak, I don't even know where it's at now, like 15 years. But poor John Hanna, our good pal up there in Buffalo, was at that game. Oh, that's devastating. I mean, to go out there back-to-back weeks, you're in feet of snow inside that old stadium, the old Ralph Wilson Stadium. But maybe they need to sacrifice more bodies into the pit if they want to win something. But I don't know. Josh Allen can't really be blamed. I mean, he's balled out in the games he's needed to, played, massive roles in where they were at. But Kansas City just got it done, and Buffalo, man, just cannot catch a break.
For me, I'm going for that game again, but not for the play on the field. I'm going for the brother up in that suite in Highmark Stadium. Jason Kelce, Taylor T. Swizzle, Brittany Mahomes, Patrick Mahomes' dad, Donna Kelce. They were rocking Sunday night in Buffalo. Regardless of the elements, you had Jason Kelce, the man of the people, out there Sunday afternoon in the lots, drinking out of bowling balls, being with the fans, really soaking it all in after the Eagles fell last week. And how can you not root for the Chiefs at this point? There was so much talk about Patrick Mahomes not being able to having never to go on the road in the playoffs except for the Super Bowl. And, this was going to be a big test, and he handled it very, very well. He made plays. He's probably one of the best quarterbacks that I've seen, especially in this era and these like young quarterbacks, to evade pressure, evade sacks, and still make a play down the field. But how about the atmosphere in the crowd with Jason Kelce jumping out of the suite into the stands, pounding a few brews, and just having a good time, hoisting the kids to show signs to Taylor Swift. I mean, how can you not root for the Chiefs right now? Yeah, you can say they show Taylor Swift too much, but, you show her. You show Jason Kelce riled up with his shirt off, all, bare-chested, having a good time at the game. How can you not root for this team? And they go against another AFC North, or they go up against an AFC North opponent next week in the Baltimore Ravens, the AFC Championship game. How can you not root for this Chiefs team to make it back into the Super Bowl and really just put on a show once again? Because they've been very, very impressive on one of the teams that this is probably the worst Chiefs team that we have seen over their Super Bowl stretch. And they've still got the job done, and their offense continues to skyrocket after what they have done over these past 2 weeks in the frigid cold in Kansas City against Miami, and then against Buffalo, where they put on another masterful show. And now heading into their biggest test yet against Baltimore, it's going to be a very, very fun matchup Sunday afternoon at 3:00.
There's been a lot of talk on social media this season about how the NFL year has kind of been lackluster. There've been random blowouts here and there. The big games haven't been that good. I mean, even this week, we saw the Ravens and Texans, which should have been a great, intriguing battle, just kind of sputter out and turn out to be nothing. And while the on-field product has been a little lackluster at times, you can't tell me that this season hasn't had its charming moments. I mean, even look right now. Is Lamar finally going to get over the hump? I can't say I hope he does because he's an AFC North rival. But on the other hand, he won me a fantasy football championship. So is that enough? Probably not. But if he gets a ring, it's a shame he has to share it with all of the others, especially Harbaugh. I dislike the Harbaughs immensely. But then you go to the NFC. What loyalties do you have in the NFC? Jordan Love made a nice little run after he struggled to begin the year. And now you have that You have Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy, man. I know it's popular to hate on Brock Purdy, but I just can't. So many talented weapons, and I know Jimmy G struggled with the same weapons, blah blah blah, or whatever the argument is. You can't have Brock Purdy win a ring. But do you know what can stop Brock from winning a ring? This is absolute hate speech right now. This is 1,000% hate speech. I cannot see Brock Purdy win a Super Bowl. Does McCaffrey, Debo, Ayuk, all of them deserve it? Sure. But Brock Purdy doesn't. And this is absolutely just me hating, again, just to reiterate. But you know what stands in their way of getting to the Super Bowl and showing that it's rigged because the logo colors, once again, could potentially match the team colors? Jared Goff and the Detroit Lions. And I saw this comparison on social media. They are the Pittsburgh Pirates of the NFL. They hadn't won a playoff game since 1991. And here they are, the arena's bumping. As a Pittsburgh fan, how do you not kind of root for them? It's the same thing. If and when the Pirates make it to the World Series, assuming they can do so before the PNC Park lease is up and they move the team to London, England or somewhere, that's what PNC is going to look like. These fans have endured 0-16 seasons. They've endured Dan Orlovsky running into the back of the end zone, getting a safety. They watched Calvin Johnson and Matt Stafford have their primes wasted. And now finally, thanks to Dan Campbell and his 4,000 milligrams of caffeine every morning, this team is inspired and potentially going to make it to the big one. And I'm excited. I love rooting for this Lions team. And again, I'm not a Lions fan, obviously, but they have something about them that you can love it. And maybe, them taking out people's kneecaps and whatnot makes it a little hard. But you know what? As shitty as that is, sorry. There's so much to like about this team. And I'm going to root for them the rest of the way now that Buffalo's gone. And to continue the eulogy of my two wonderful co-hosts here, damn did that hurt. Damn, did that hurt. That thing looked like it was going to sneak in there, and then it looked like me if I sneezed while I was playing Mario Kart. It just took a hit and went to the right. It wasn't even close. And I can't imagine what my pal John was thinking in that stadium. I once watched him whip a chair across a room when DeAndre Hopkins made that Hail Mary catch against the Bills. I can't imagine what he did in a playoff game. And John, if for some reason you happen to be listening to this while you're up there in Rochester, I hope you're doing okay. Please give me a call if you need something. But geez, that just stinks. You got Diggs dropping the bomb. You got Josh Allen not throwing to Diggs because he was trying to hit Shakir in the end zone, and everyone's acting like he whiffed the throw on purpose. He got bumped into. If I can, I'm pretty sure that that's why the throw was off, not because he was intentionally throwing it short. And I know he overthrows all the time, but something that minute can really throw off a throw like that. And I'm confused why people are having such a difficult time understanding that 300-pound men backing into you is enough to make you misfire. But whatever. I really thought Sean McDermott was going to motivate these guys and get them to the playoffs. Or get them to the Super Bowl, excuse me. And they made an incredible run. Because there was a time where it looked like the Bills weren't even going to get into the playoffs. But they went on that great run. And unfortunately, it just didn't work out for them. And I know there's been some negative things about the Bills Mafia because of all the snowballs and whatnot, and I criticized it last week. But you have to feel for these fans. It just really stinks. It really stinks to see that they had to endure another missed field goal. And it really stinks that this episode is over. It really does, because this was a good one. This was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun talking to my friends. You don't care about that. But guess what? I do. So tough luck. Fellas, anything else before we wrap it up?
I'll just say amen to your last call. And what a magical matchup it would have been to see the Lions and Bills in the damn Super Bowl. But we don't get to see that, and we're going to see either Brock Purdy or Lamar Jackson or Mahomes yet again. But hopefully maybe the Lions can pull something out of their behinds and beat the Niners and get to the Super Bowl. So,
yep.
Go Loins. Go Loins. Go Chiefs.
Lions are America's team. I want
Chiefs
Lions
for Ethan.
I want Lions Chiefs, and I want the Lions to do it. I want the Lions to win. If they make it to the Super Bowl, they better have Eminem run out. Full 2000s little cargo hat cap in the hoodie and all. I need it.
I will say with that Lions, their first round game, his little monologue to open up the game. Oh man, that had me
That was
going.
hype.
Oh,
Mhm.
it
That was
was.
hype. It's got to be like what McDermott was doing after he studied some film. It's got to be similar. I just can't get over that. Them to lose like that's just plain wrong. But it is what it is. We'll see you next time, stranded in Pittsburgh. You've been wonderful. We've been mediocre, and that's exactly how it should be. We'll see you next time.